The Charleston sky had been strange all day, the kind of dense, heavy gray that pressed low over the city, trapping the heat beneath it like a lid on a boiling pot. By late evening, the clouds had swollen into something darker, more dangerous, rolling inland from the harbor like an army preparing to invade. Ethan Cole stood barefoot at the kitchen sink, staring through the screen door at the backyard as fat raindrops began to splatter against the old wooden deck. The smell of wet magnolia drifted in, thick and sweet. Charleston summers were always like this, suffocating and sticky, but tonight, it felt almost symbolic, like the world itself was holding its breath. He checked the clock again. 9:47 p.m. Madison was late. She'd texted an hour ago saying she had to stay late at work to handle a client crisis, but there was something about the message that gnawed at him. The tone felt distant, as if she hadn't written it to her husband of 7 years but to a coworker she barely knew. Ethan picked up his glass of bourbon and swirled the amber liquid inside, staring at the half-melted ice. He'd been married long enough to know the rhythms of Madison's behavior, the little habits that made her who she was. She wasn't careless with her words. If she'd said she'd be late, she usually followed up with details: what happened, who she was with, how long it might take. Tonight? Just a vague excuse. And lately, there had been so many vague excuses. 3 weeks ago, it was a networking dinner. Last Friday, a girls' night out. Yesterday, she came home smelling of a perfume he didn't recognize, and Madison had never been the type to switch fragrances suddenly. Ethan took a slow sip, the bourbon burning his throat, and tried to convince himself that he was overthinking things. That was what Madison always said when he voiced his worries. "You overanalyze everything, Ethan. You need to trust me." He'd trusted her. He wanted to keep trusting her. But trust had a funny way of rotting when little cracks started to appear. The wind howled suddenly, rattling the screen door. Ethan turned away from the storm, pacing the worn hardwood floors of the living room. His eyes drifted to the mantel where framed photos chronicled their life together, a sunburned selfie from their honeymoon in Key West, Madison laughing under a straw hat, a posed family portrait taken 2 Christmases ago, a candid shot of Madison holding their old golden retriever, Daisy, who'd passed away last winter. The Madison in those photos felt like a ghost now. Lately, the woman he lived with seemed like someone else entirely, someone distracted, distant, almost cold. His phone buzzed on the counter. He grabbed it quickly, a flicker of hope that it might be her saying she was on her way home. But it wasn't. It was a push notification from a weather app. Severe thunderstorm warning, Charleston County. Ethan let out a humorless laugh. Fitting. He stared at his phone for a long moment, thumb hovering over Madison's name in his contacts. He could call her. He should call her. But a strange dread held him back. If she answered too quickly, too casually, he'd know she was lying. If she didn't answer at all, well, that would say even more. Instead, he opened the gallery and scrolled through photos of Madison. Some were recent, but he found himself going further and further back, as though digging through layers of time. The deeper he went, the more he felt a sharp ache in his chest. They'd been so happy once. He remembered long walks down King Street at sunset, sharing fried shrimp baskets on Folly Beach, making plans for the future late into the night. And now? Now, they barely talked about anything real. The garage door rumbled suddenly, startling him. Ethan set his glass down with a thud and turned toward the door, his heart thudding in his chest. Moments later, Madison walked in, shaking raindrops from her hair. She was dressed in a sleek navy blouse and black pencil skirt, her heels clicking against the tile. She looked incredible. A little too incredible for a late night at the office. "Hey, babe," she said, slightly breathless, as she dropped her purse on the counter. "Sorry I'm so late. The client meeting went way over." Her voice was warm, but her eyes didn't quite meet his. Ethan forced a smile. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just exhausting." She kicked off her heels and stretched her feet, wincing slightly. Can't wait to crash. Ethan nodded, watching her closely. There was something off in her body language, something rehearsed. As Madison disappeared into the bedroom to change, Ethan's eyes fell on her purse. It sat there, half open, like an invitation. The storm outside roared louder, lightning flashing through the windows. Ethan's breath caught as a thought took hold. Maybe tonight wasn't just about a storm in the sky. Maybe it was about the storm brewing right here in his own home. Ethan stood in the kitchen for a long moment after Madison disappeared into the bedroom, the muffled sound of drawers opening and closing drifting through the half-shut door. His gaze lingered on her purse like a predator watching prey. His heart thudded against his ribs as lightning cracked outside, illuminating the kitchen for a split second. He wasn't a suspicious man by nature. Madison had never given him a real reason to doubt her, until recently. It wasn't just her late nights or the sudden perfume. It was the subtle shift, the way she smiled without showing her teeth now, the way she seemed both restless and distant at once. He could almost feel the lie hovering between them like humidity in the Charleston air. Ethan took a quiet step toward the purse. His breath caught as he reached out, fingers trembling slightly. This wasn't who he wanted to be, a husband sneaking through his wife's belongings, but something deep inside screamed at him to look. He eased open the zipper and peered inside. Wallet. Lipstick. A small bottle of that unfamiliar perfume. And then, her phone. Madison was famously protective of her phone. She carried it everywhere, like it was an extension of herself. Seeing it here, unattended, felt almost too easy. He reached for it, then froze as the bedroom door creaked open. Ethan. Madison's voice floated out, casual but sharp at the edges. What are you doing? He jerked his hand back like a guilty teenager caught stealing. Just grabbing some water. She appeared in the doorway, now dressed in a soft cotton t-shirt and shorts, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes flicked toward her purse, just for an instant. Ethan caught it. A quick, instinctive check. Something twisted in his gut. Madison crossed the kitchen and scooped up her phone smoothly, sliding it into her pocket like it belonged there. You scared me, standing there in the dark, she said with a small laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Yeah, sorry. Ethan forced a chuckle. Storms got me on edge. She kissed his cheek, quick and perfunctory. Let's go to bed. I'm dead tired. Ethan nodded, swallowing his frustration. Sure. The next few days were a blur of polite conversations and hollow routines. Madison left early for work, came home late, and seemed permanently tethered to her phone. Ethan tried to convince himself he was imagining things. Maybe the long hours really were about work. Maybe the perfume was a gift from a friend. Maybe the secretive behavior was just stress. But the cracks kept widening. On Wednesday evening, Ethan stopped by a small local diner they used to love, a cozy, old-fashioned place on King Street with red vinyl booths and a waitress who always remembered their orders. He'd been hoping Madison might meet him there for dinner, a spontaneous midweek date like they used to have. When he called her, she answered on the second ring, her voice overly bright. Hey, babe. I'm, stuck in a meeting. Can't talk long. Ethan frowned. A meeting at 7:30? Where are you? I was thinking we could grab dinner at Benny's. Tonight? Oh, I wish. But we're going over projections for next quarter. Ethan glanced around the diner, suddenly hyper-aware of how alone he was. Right, he said slowly. Well. I'll see you at home later, then. Love you, she said quickly, and the line went dead. Something in her tone was wrong, rushed, nervous. Ethan sat there for a long time, staring at the phone like it might confess the truth if he just held it tightly enough. Finally, he paid for his uneaten meal and headed home, his mind a storm of doubt. 2 nights later, it happened again. Madison claimed she was going out for a girls' night. She dressed carefully, taking extra time with her makeup, slipping into a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly. Ethan leaned against the bedroom doorway, arms crossed. "You look incredible," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "Thanks." She smiled, but it was the smile of someone rehearsed, someone performing. "Don't wait up, okay?" He forced a nod. "Sure." When the door closed behind her, Ethan's chest tightened. This is it, he thought. Either I'm going insane, or she's hiding something, and I'm going to find out which. He waited 15 minutes, then grabbed his keys and slipped out into the night. The rain had returned, falling in a fine mist that clung to the streets like fog. Ethan's old black pickup truck blended easily into the shadows as he followed Madison's car at a careful distance. She drove downtown, weaving through narrow, historic streets lined with gas lamps and moss-draped oaks. Ethan's stomach churned as he watched her brake in front of a sleek, modern hotel near the waterfront. Madison parked, checked her reflection in the mirror, then stepped out, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. A moment later, a man emerged from the hotel lobby. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of easy confidence Ethan had never possessed. Madison's face lit up when she saw him, a radiant, unguarded smile Ethan hadn't seen directed at him in months. The man leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick peck. A kiss full of familiarity and hunger. Ethan felt like the world tilted beneath him. Rain pounded the windshield, mixing with the hot sting of his own tears. His breathing came fast and shallow, his vision blurring. Madison laughed at something the man said, her hand brushing his arm in a way Ethan recognized all too well. Then they disappeared inside together, leaving Ethan alone in the truck, drowning in rage and heartbreak. For nearly an hour, Ethan sat there, frozen, staring at the hotel entrance. 1,000 memories flashed through his mind, their first kiss under the fireworks on the 4th of July, the night he proposed on the Charleston pier, the vows they'd spoken in front of friends and family. All of it, ashes now. The storm inside him solidified into something cold and sharp. He didn't storm inside and confront them. He didn't scream or cry or plead. Instead, he drove home in silence, his mind already shifting gears. Madison thought she was clever. She thought she could humiliate him, destroy their marriage, and walk away unscathed. But she was wrong. Ethan wasn't going to simply leave her. He wasn't going to beg. He was going to make her pay. And by the time he was done, Madison would wish she'd never betrayed him. The next morning, Madison moved through the house like nothing had happened, humming softly as she poured coffee into her travel mug. She looked radiant, almost glowing, like a woman freshly in love. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through his phone while watching her over the rim of his mug. She didn't notice. She never did, not anymore. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she wore a pale blue blouse he'd never seen before. It clung to her figure perfectly, probably something she bought for him, Ethan thought bitterly. She glanced at him. "You okay? You're quiet this morning." "Didn't sleep well," Ethan said flatly. It wasn't a lie. Madison gave him a sympathetic smile and kissed the top of his head lightly, a touch so empty it felt almost insulting. "Well, I'll be late tonight. Big presentation tomorrow." He forced a nod. "Of course. Go crush it." She winked playfully and headed for the door. When the front door shut behind her, Ethan exhaled slowly, setting down his mug. His hands were steady now. Calm. Controlled. He'd spent the night lying awake, not just replaying what he'd seen but planning. If he confronted her now, she'd deny everything. She'd cry, twist the narrative, maybe even leave him before he could act. Madison was clever, manipulative when cornered. No. He needed proof. And he needed a plan that would leave him untouchable. Ethan had always been methodical, in his job at the shipping company, in fixing things around the house, in his hobbies. Now, he would apply that same precision to destroying his wife and her lover. Ethan began small. That afternoon, he stopped by a hardware store on the edge of town. The smell of sawdust and motor oil hung in the air as he browsed aisles of rope, tarps, and heavy-duty trash bags. He picked up a few other items too: duct tape, work gloves, zip ties, paying cash to avoid leaving a paper trail. To anyone else, it looked like a weekend project. To Ethan, it was preparation. Back home, he stored everything neatly in the locked shed at the far corner of the yard. Madison never went out there. She hated the smell of mildew and spiders. It was his space, and now, it was his war room. Next, he began tracking Madison's movements more closely. He memorized her schedule, noting when she left, when she came home, and which excuses she favored. He even installed a small GPS tracker beneath her car, a cheap device he'd ordered online months ago for no real reason. Now, it had a very real purpose. Over the next week, a clear pattern emerged. Madison would work late, 2 nights a week and go out for drinks with the girls, on Fridays. The tracker showed her car parked in the same place each time, near that same waterfront hotel. Ethan's teeth clenched every time he saw it. But he didn't act impulsively. Not yet. He needed to know more about the man, the intruder who'd stolen his wife's heart. On a humid Thursday evening, Ethan parked his truck down the street from the hotel and waited. He kept the windows cracked to fight the oppressive heat, beads of sweat sliding down his neck as he stared at the entrance. At exactly 7:42 p.m., Madison arrived. Ethan's breath caught as he watched her step out of her car, adjusting her dress in the reflection of the window. A few moments later, the man appeared. Ethan leaned forward, memorizing every detail. Tall, maybe 6'2". Dark hair, neatly styled. Expensive watch that gleamed even in the dim light. Confident posture, like someone used to being admired. They kissed openly this time, no hesitation, no secrecy. Madison clung to him like a lifeline, her body language screaming desire. Ethan's jaw tightened. When they disappeared inside, Ethan waited another 15 minutes, then stepped out of his truck and followed at a distance. He didn't go into the hotel, that would be reckless. Instead, he lingered near the valet stand, listening to the idle chatter of staff. It didn't take long to overhear the name, Ryan Blake. Apparently, Ryan was a regular. A wealthy businessman who traveled frequently and tipped well enough that the staff adored him. Ethan filed the name away like ammunition. That weekend, Ethan decided to test Madison. He made breakfast, her favorite, pancakes with fresh strawberries, and greeted her warmly, almost playfully. She seemed pleasantly surprised by his sudden attentiveness. They ate together, chatting about mundane things. Then Ethan struck, casual as can be. "So, how was girls' night last night?" Madison didn't flinch. Didn't even pause. "Oh, you know, same old. Drinks, gossip. You wouldn't have survived 5 minutes." She laughed lightly and popped a strawberry into her mouth. Her performance was flawless. But Ethan had been there. He'd seen her with Ryan. And now, watching her lie so easily, something inside him went cold. He smiled warmly. "Glad you had fun." Madison beamed, completely fooled by his act. Over the next few days, Ethan played the role of the loving husband perfectly. He brought her flowers, planned a date night, even left sweet notes on her pillow. Each gesture lowered her guard a little more. By Thursday, she seemed almost smug, convinced he suspected nothing. That was when Ethan began setting the final pieces in place. On Friday morning, Ethan suggested a romantic getaway. "Just us," he said casually as Madison sipped her coffee. "It's been so long since we've spent real time together. What do you say?" Madison's eyes widened slightly, caught off guard. "This weekend?" Yeah. There's that old plantation house I've been fixing up out near the marshes. Thought we could have dinner there, just you and me. It'll be private, peaceful. Madison hesitated for only a fraction of a second. That sounds lovely. Ethan watched her carefully. She was probably already planning how to use this to her advantage, maybe even text Ryan to boast about her husband's obliviousness. Perfect. The trap was set. That afternoon, Ethan made one more stop at the hardware store, picking up a few final supplies. Then he drove out to the plantation house, a crumbling, abandoned property he'd been hired to assess for a local developer months ago. No one went there anymore. The floorboards creaked, the paint peeled in long strips, and the surrounding marshland kept curious tourists away. Ethan walked through each room slowly, visualizing every step of what would happen here. By the time the sun set, he had prepared everything. The evening air was heavy with humidity, thick as syrup and tinged with the briny scent of the nearby marshes. A full moon hung low over the Charleston horizon, veiled in wispy clouds, casting pale light across the long dirt road leading to the abandoned plantation house. Ethan stood inside the old house, every sense sharp and electric. The place smelled of mildew and decay, but to him, it smelled like opportunity. He'd spent hours preparing, securing the old wooden shutters so no one could see in, clearing a path through the cluttered rooms, setting everything precisely where it needed to be. On the cracked dining table, he'd arranged a simple yet romantic setting, 2 plates, a bottle of wine, a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked himself. It looked like the perfect evening for a couple trying to rekindle their love. Only Ethan knew the truth. This wasn't about rekindling anything. It was about ending it. He checked his watch. 8:07 p.m. Any minute now, Madison would arrive. And he suspected she wouldn't come alone. Madison gripped the steering wheel tightly, her heart racing as she drove down the deserted road. She glanced at her phone on the passenger seat, lit up with a string of texts from Ryan. Ryan, you sure about this? Ryan, feels risky. Ryan, Madison, answer me. She finally picked it up at a stop sign and typed quickly. Madison, relax. He thinks this is just a dinner. After, I'll meet you back at the hotel. She hit send and tossed the phone back onto the seat, forcing a smile. She was good at compartmentalizing, good at living 2 lives. Ethan had been oddly attentive lately, showering her with affection like he used to in the early days. It almost made her feel guilty, almost. But guilt was a luxury Madison didn't indulge in. As the plantation house came into view, dark and hulking against the moonlight, she shivered. The place looked like something out of a ghost story. She parked beside Ethan's truck and sat there for a moment, taking a deep breath. She didn't notice another pair of headlights far down the road, slowly approaching, staying just out of sight. Ethan stood on the porch as Madison approached, her heels clicking softly against the old wooden steps. She wore a flowing white dress tonight, ironic, considering what was about to happen. Wow, she said, looking around. This place is something. Ethan smiled warmly, masking the storm raging beneath his skin. Historic, isn't it? Thought it'd be romantic. No distractions, just us. Madison's lips curled into a carefully practiced smile. It's perfect. He reached for her hand, guiding her inside. The flickering light from a single lantern cast long, eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Dinner's ready, Ethan said softly, pulling out a chair for her at the table. Madison sat, glancing at the wine and flowers. You've really outdone yourself. Only the best for you. His tone was calm, smooth, but his eyes were cold. As Madison sipped her wine, Ethan excused himself, stepping briefly into the next room under the pretense of checking on dessert. In reality, he was listening. And he wasn't surprised when he heard a faint vibration from Madison's phone. He returned silently, watching from the doorway as she leaned down to check the message. Ryan, outside. Where are you? Ethan's lips curled into a dark smile. Right on time. Moments later, the front door creaked open. Madison jumped, eyes wide, as Ryan stepped inside, looking tense. "Madison," he called, his voice low but urgent. "What the hell is going on? I don't like this." Ethan emerged from the shadows, calm and collected. "Neither do I, Ryan." Ryan froze, confusion flashing across his face. "Who the hell are you?" Ethan stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Husband." The word hit the room like a gunshot. Madison shot to her feet, her face draining of color. "Ethan, this isn't," she stammered, reaching out toward him. "Save it," Ethan snapped, his voice cutting like a blade. "I've spent weeks listening to your lies. Watching you sneak off, thinking you were clever. I know everything." Ryan's posture shifted, protective now. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. If I had." "Shut up." Ethan's calmness returned, terrifying in its steadiness. "You knew enough." He glanced at Madison, his gaze ice cold. "And you really thought I wouldn't find out?" Madison's lower lip trembled, but she quickly composed herself, slipping into the same manipulative charm she'd always used. "Ethan, please, let's just talk about this." "Oh, we'll talk," Ethan said softly. "All three of us." Before either of them could react, Ethan reached behind a cabinet and pulled out a length of rope. Ryan instinctively stepped forward, fists clenched. "You really think you're gonna scare me with that?" Ryan scoffed, trying to mask his unease. Ethan tilted his head. "No. I'm not here to scare you, Ryan. I'm here to stop you." Madison's voice rose, panicked now. "Ethan, stop this. You're not thinking straight." "Oh, I'm thinking perfectly clearly," Ethan said, advancing on Ryan. Ryan swung at him, a wild, desperate punch, but Ethan had expected it. He ducked, drove his shoulder into Ryan's stomach, and they crashed to the ground. Madison screamed as the two men grappled, fists flying, furniture crashing around them. Ethan's rage gave him strength. Within moments, he had Ryan pinned, a knee digging into his chest. He looped the rope around Ryan's wrists with practiced efficiency, ignoring his curses and thrashing. When Ryan was secured, Ethan rose slowly, breathing hard. His shirt was torn, his knuckles bloodied, but his eyes were bright and calm. Madison backed into a corner, trembling. "Ethan, please, you don't have to do this." "Oh, Madison." His voice was almost tender. "I do." Ethan dragged Ryan toward the old cellar door in the back of the house. The wood groaned as he flung it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into blackness. "No one's been down there in decades," Ethan said conversationally. "Perfect place for unfinished business." Ryan thrashed wildly. "You're insane. Let me go." Ethan ignored him, shoving him down the steps. Ryan tumbled with a sickening thud and a shout of pain. Madison sobbed, clutching her chest. "Ethan, you're scaring me." "Good." He turned to her, his face suddenly devoid of warmth. "You should be scared." He advanced slowly, each step deliberate. "You didn't just cheat on me, Madison. You humiliated me. Lied to my face. Made me believe I was crazy." Madison shook her head violently. I made a mistake." "No." Ethan's shout echoed through the hollow house, startling even himself. He took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again." He grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but with unyielding strength. "Now, you get to live with the consequences." Ethan dragged Madison toward the cellar, ignoring her screams and pleas. In the darkness below, Ryan moaned in pain, his voice breaking. "Please, don't." Ethan looked at them both, two people who had shattered his life, and felt a strange, serene calm wash over him. This house, he said softly, was built on lies. Slave labor. Greed. Betrayal. It's only fitting it ends the same way. He shoved Madison forward. She stumbled down the stairs, crashing into Ryan with a scream. Before either of them could scramble back up, Ethan slammed the heavy cellar door shut and bolted it with a rusted iron latch. The pounding began almost immediately. "Ethan. Please. Don't do this." Madison shrieked. Ryan's voice joined hers, hoarse and desperate. Ethan stood there, listening, until their voices became hoarse and ragged. Then he turned and walked away. Ethan moved methodically, like a man following steps in a well-rehearsed dance. He retrieved the gasoline can from the shed outside, doused the base of the old house, and lit a single match. The flame caught instantly, roaring to life as it devoured the dry, rotten wood. Inside, the pounding and screaming rose to a frantic crescendo. Ethan didn't look back. He walked calmly to his truck, climbed in, and drove away as the night sky behind him bloomed orange and red. The next morning, Charleston woke to news of a tragic fire at an abandoned property. The authorities would find two charred bodies, unrecognizable but clearly entwined. The official story would be that two trespassers had been caught in the blaze. Ethan sat on his porch with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the moss-draped oaks. The world looked peaceful, almost innocent. He sipped slowly, savoring the moment. No remorse. No guilt. Just a deep, abiding calm. Madison was gone. Ryan was gone. And Ethan was free. For the first time in months, he smiled. 3 weeks had passed since the fire. Charleston had moved on, as it always did. The city was resilient: storms, hurricanes, floods, and now, a tragedy involving two nameless trespassers in a crumbling old plantation house. The official investigation had wrapped up quickly. The police report stated that the couple had likely been vagrants or thrill-seekers who broke in and accidentally caused the blaze while trying to keep warm. There were no fingerprints left, no surviving evidence, just two blackened corpses and a heap of ash. The news ran the story for a few days before letting it fade into the background noise of everyday life. Ethan knew no one would ever suspect him. He was just another grieving husband whose wife had mysteriously disappeared. Madison's friends assumed she'd run off, overwhelmed by the stress of her job and her rocky marriage. Even Madison's own mother, a cold, distant woman, admitted she wouldn't be surprised if her daughter had left to find herself. The world had given Ethan exactly what he wanted. Closure without questions. On a warm Sunday morning, Ethan sat at a cafe on King Street, sipping black coffee and reading the Post and Courier. He looked like any other Charleston local enjoying his weekend, relaxed, respectable, blending perfectly into the crowd. He'd even lost a bit of weight, his face leaner, his posture more confident. Across the street, tourists strolled past pastel-colored townhouses, snapping photos of the historic architecture. Street performers played soft jazz, their notes drifting through the heavy, humid air. Ethan breathed it all in, calm and composed. The waitress approached with a friendly smile. "Another refill, Mr. Cole." "Please," Ethan said warmly, offering a charming grin. As she poured, she leaned closer. "Have you heard? They're saying the fire out at that old plantation wasn't an accident after all. Some folks think it might have been foul play." Ethan raised his eyebrows, feigning polite curiosity. "Oh. I hadn't heard that." "Yeah." The waitress lowered her voice conspiratorially. "They say the couple that died there were lovers. And you know how people talk in this town. There's even a rumor that the woman was married." Ethan's smile didn't falter. "Charleston does love its stories," he said smoothly. "Thanks for the refill." As she walked away, Ethan folded his newspaper neatly and stared out the window. Inside, his pulse remained steady. Lovers, married woman, foul play. The words rolled off him like water off stone. No one would ever connect the dots. Madison and Ryan weren't just gone, they'd been erased, consumed by fire and swallowed by rumor. Ethan paid his bill, left a generous tip, and strolled down King Street, nodding to neighbors and acquaintances. To them, he was the picture of resilience, a man moving forward after heartbreak. As he walked past a boutique window, he caught his own reflection and paused. For a moment, he didn't see Ethan Cole, loyal husband and respectable Charleston citizen. He saw something colder. Something free. Something dangerous. His phone buzzed in his pocket, jolting him from his thoughts. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A message from an unfamiliar number. Unknown, dinner tonight. I'd love to see you again. Red heart. Ethan's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. He typed a reply. Ethan, of course. I know the perfect place. Sliding the phone back into his pocket, he kept walking, blending seamlessly into the Sunday crowd. Behind him, the bells of a nearby church began to ring, their chimes echoing through the humid Charleston air. Each note sounded like a countdown. Far out by the marshes, the ruins of the plantation house still smoldered beneath a thin layer of ash. A lone crow perched on the blackened chimney, cawing into the silence. The house was gone. The evidence was gone. Madison and Ryan were gone. But Ethan? Ethan was just getting started.